Hi, my name is Bridget Cowan Longoria. I am your professor for Soc 461, Section 1001, Self and Society. So I do these little videos, especially for an introduction, and then a few of them throughout, which we'll talk about later on. But as a microsociologist or symbolic interactionist, I hate the impersonable kind of nature of these online classes. And so I do an intro video to kind of explain the class to you, my expectations, what you can expect throughout the semester, the book that you need, kind of what the class is about, just to make sure that we're kind of all on the same page. So this intro video will be kind of what you would get if you were in that first day of class. It'll be a little bit long, but ultimately it should really, set you up for having a great semester and knowing what you need to do, what I expect, all that good stuff. So let's see. So yeah, this class is Self and Society. So some of you, if you've taken sociology classes before, especially maybe an introduction course or a theory course, you know that there are many different, theoretical perspectives within sociology, within the field of sociology, ranging from kind of the macro viewpoints where they look at structures and institutions, that lens kind of looking over everything, if you think about it as like a camera. And then people go into that meso level with theories that look at organizations and communities and larger groups and the social processes within each. And then you go in, really zoom in to the micro sociology, so that micro level where you look at groups still but smaller. You look at social psychology, so in the individual level, the ways that individuals are socialized from those macro and micro, because as sociology kind of teaches us, we could not be us without society. And so self and society are like inextricably linked. You can't look at an individual without considering kind of that macro and that meso level where they grew up, the time, the context of where they grew up, what era, generation, right? We all hear, baby boomer generation have these qualities, and the millennials, right? There's lots of stuff about how the millennials are ruining the world or transforming the world, all those different viewpoints. And then this new generation, the I generation, which many of you might be if you're kind of one of the younger people coming into this class. So this class is really going to be kind of looking at that link. So we're going to look at the individual identity and roles and, status, stuff like that in that way. But we're going to mainly kind of look at how the individual becomes the individual, right? How we become who we are based upon the society that we live in and all of those good things. So yeah, because there's an interrelation between who we are and the larger world within which we live. This is called microsociology and social psychology. All of the materials that we read throughout this semester then helps us kind of take this rather objective, concrete, for us, taken for granted world. We think of it, oh, this is just how it is. We're people, our personalities, or that's just how it is, or the social structure, the way that we move about our worlds, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we use money, the value that we put on money or trees or anything, right? We think that's just how it is, but it's not, right? It's socially constructed. And as we kind of jump in next week, we'll see that this objective, concrete world within which we live is not really objective and concrete. It is built through and by us, for us. And when I say us, I don't mean just necessarily maybe me and you, but all of human society and societies throughout history, because, you have to have history to be who we are today. And eventually what we're doing right now will be history. And the, interactions that we're having right now, throughout your day. All of these things are not, little or mundane. They're big things. If you think about the world, there's billions of people, and we're driving cars, and we're buying things at Starbucks and at the grocery store. We're having to get groceries to the grocery store. All of these things are very complex, even though for us it does look simple now. But there's these little kind of micro social sociological phenomenon that we can look at and tear apart and understand, and help us understand us, and us help us understand the institutions within which we live, things that we can do to change it, or just just knowing how the world works around us is beneficial. So let's see here. Let's go on to, okay, so given that, right, so since we are talking about, microsociology as a subfield, and social psychology as well, these are really large areas that people study. So this is a very theory-heavy course. It's probably a better course for in person, because we can, really debate and discuss and go over these things. But it also, I try to make it work online as best as I can. The syllabus, as you'll see, if you, it's on Canvas already. If you pull that up, you can see that I really try to make everything kind of just lined up little by little. So you start with the first one and you keep on going down. And then my modules, as I'll go over in a minute, kind of all flow together in a way that you're building up upon each week, and even throughout the week, it's built up upon each other, so that you're making connections throughout, and it doesn't seem quite as random or out of context while you're reading it and trying to put together these, these thoughts and ideas on your own at home. So given that, there is a lot of reading for this course. I try to make it, the book that I use takes these really big books and articles and condenses them down to a little bit more of a digestible amount of reading. And so hopefully the book kind of helps you. However, towards the end of the course, we kind of switch over to some of the more modern, contemporary readings. And so I use a lot more journal articles there. And those are going to be, maybe a little bit more difficult to read if you're not used to kind of the journal article style. I figure it looks like from the roster that many of you are seniors and juniors, so you probably have had some interactions with journal articles at this point, or scholarly works. So this is the book. It's called Inside Social Life: Readings in Sociological Psychology and Microsociology, by Spencer Cahill, Kent Sandstrom, and Carissa Froyam, and this is the 8th edition. Excuse me. So you're gonna need this book right away, because we start out with the first. Here, let me just go ahead and kind of go into the schedule so that we can start discussing that. So week 1, you're gonna read one chapter from the book, and then there will be 2 journal PDFs that you can get on Canvas that are really just kind of setting you up for what is sociology, why is it important, why is this subfield of sociology really important, just in general. Not necessarily, many of you or most of you really are not sociologists, and are not in sociology as a major, I should say, because we're all sociologists. But it shows you how it's important no matter what discipline that you have. This will also give you, a week to get in that book, because I think the one reading that you do have this week is fairly quick and easy. So you can order it this week, get it in by next, and then just add that on to your readings. So I'm just going to talk a little bit now about how these modules go, and how what you can expect from each week, and the assignments and whatnot. So like I said, if you look on the syllabus, I have every single week lined up with what you need to read, and then what work that you need to do if there is homework for that week. as we start out, I start out with part one. So these are in two parts for the semester. Part one is you're getting the foundation, right? So we're going to figure out what we're talking about. What is the self? How do we develop one? Where does this material come from, right? So these paradigms and theories that we're discussing. What is the role or roles of social construction, meaning, language, and interaction, which are kind of our really cornerstone building blocks for this entire semester. So like I said, week one, we're just going to kind of get this intro to the course, just get a kind of overview of why sociology is important and what it can help you do in your life. And then, just set the groundwork with the human neural plasticity and socialization reading from the book that kind of explains how, we all have this kind of nature versus nurture debate. I would imagine all of us have kind of heard that. But if you have not, it is this kind of debate of what is more important, nature, our biology, our DNA, or nurture that socialization and our culture and our society and, being held from a baby and taken care of throughout the life course, which one is more influential on us as humans. And as sociologists, we have that debate within sociology, but overall, we kind of all concede that it's both, right? You have to have the biological standings and DNA to even be able to make us social beings. And like this first reading says that the makeup of our minds allows us to be socialized into people that can create these vast societies and empires and roads and buildings and everyday interactions with each other, right? Our brains and our genes make that possible. And then he kind of goes on to how our socialization impacts also that DNA, right? Because as we develop and learn as individuals in society right now, and then also throughout time, through evolution, it changes our DNA and our biology and our makeup. So that just kind of sets the ground with, like where we're at, what we're doing, why it's important. And then, so you're going to watch this video, and then there's also a lecture kind of for that as well. And so, I should also tell you that, so I'm always going to have a lecture on the week. So you'll have required readings, and then above that, the name of the week, right? So intro to the course for this one, and then next week, the social construction of reality. And under that name, you can open that up and see a lecture. I either type up a lecture or I do a video recording of the lecture, just depending on, how much time I have, how difficult the material is, those kind of things. So it's just kind of to help you maybe flesh out the broad strokes, the important things, or just what I mean, but like why I chose these readings and how they work together and how they work with other things that we've learned. And then I also provide you with questions and comments and ideas and things to think about at the end of this lecture. And those are going to be really important for your module reflections and also while you're reading it. So if you want to read those questions and comments and stuff before you read, so that way that it makes it easier and faster to read. Exactly like, hey, I'm reading to this point. I want to make sure I understand that. I want to make sure that I caught that piece. I want to make sure that I think about the importance of this, right? She's saying this is important. Let me think about it a little bit more. Or you can read it afterwards or look at them afterwards and make sure that you notice those parts, right? And that you considered that idea. And if you didn't, maybe go back and make sure that you did. And then whenever I'll talk more about these module reflections, which are the assignments that you're going to turn in, you're turn one for every module, so there's 4 of them. You can use those questions and comments and stuff to kind of make sure that when you're reflecting and you're writing this paper, you're really kind of making connections and understanding everything, showing me that you understand it in the proper ways. But again, we'll talk about that a little bit more when I discuss the module reflections. Okay, and so then we go into week 2. So week 2, 3, and 4 are going to be our foundational theoretical perspectives. Okay, these are the ideas that are going to underpin every single thing that you read throughout this semester, right? So even if somebody later on in the kind of critical part where we're talking about race and gender and that kind of thing, even if they don't specifically or explicitly say, social construction orality or symbolic interactionism, dramaturgy, these ideas are still going to be implicit in what they're saying, right? It forms the foundation, the perspective, or really the paradigm through which they're looking and developing their ideas and their research. So these first 3 weeks are very important for getting kind of setting up the stage for what we're talking about and for you to be able to understand the rest of the things throughout the semester. So the social construction of reality, week 2, week 3 is that symbolic interaction, and then of course dramaturgy. And so on that week 3, you'll see that you have assignment part 1 due by midnight that Sunday. That is going to be we have a 5-part assignment that leads up to your research paper. So you have a major research paper that's due for your final at the end of the semester, but there's 4 other components that you'll turn in throughout the semester that build up to that 5th one, and we'll talk about that in a minute when I get to your assignments. And then you'll see on week 4, where we have the dramaturgy readings, you have your module reflection due that Sunday by midnight. And then that will be kind of a reflection where you discuss and compare and contrast and, tell me some of your ideas that you got from it, from the readings, from the entire module, right? So from week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And so that takes a little bit of thinking about. It takes some time. It takes some critical thinking skills. You do have to probably put in a few hours into developing this paper, but we'll talk about that in a minute whenever I go over your assignments. And so you have 1 assignment, so part 1 of the 5, on usually the 3rd week. Some weeks don't have 4 weeks, but it goes kind of like this, right? And then you have a module reflection the very last week. So you have 2 things due each module, and each module is 3 or 4 weeks. So it's not too bad. It's pretty manageable. The readings, are all there. You can read all of the readings that you have for the entire 4 weeks in 1 week if you want, or 2 weeks, and then start working on. You can turn in your assignments at any time before the due date, right? I don't accept late work at all. That's a really important thing for me to let you know. Because it's an online class and you have everything readily available to you, there is no excuse for late work. So I don't accept it, right? If you know that you have a vacation, if you know that you have a sporting event that you have to go to, if you have a football game or basketball game, whatever, that's not in season right now, but you know what I mean? You can get it done beforehand. So there's no excuse for late work. So I don't accept late work, no matter what, really. So you have 2 assignments during each module. I talk with my hands a lot. Sorry if that's distracting to you. And then you go to module 2, and then we go the macro to the micro. So we really look at kind of more of that interrelation of how that macro institutions and social structure and all of those kind of big, large things that do seem really concrete and like we couldn't change them very well, right? Seep in and make us who we are. And then we go to identity and roles. So we get, more in that where it seems like identity and roles, that's just us, that's individuals. It's more of that, of who we are as a reflection from society, because we are society at the end of the day. Spoiler alert, you are society, society is you. You cannot have society without people, and people cannot be who they are without society, and you're a direct reflection of the world around you. And so that identity and roles really gets into that aspect of it, of us as individuals, and that connection to the larger world within which we live. And then we go into emotions. And again, something that seems very individual, right? My emotions. And we'll see how those are really products of our socialization as well. And then we move into part 2, right? So you have 2 modules within part 1. And then so that sets up really the foundation. Those are the basic things that you need to know for microsociology and social psychology. Those are the big things, big areas that people study. And so people study sociology of emotions, and they go and do research to try to explain more of the nuanced details of that sociology of emotions, or sociology of identity and roles. That sort of thing. Part 2 is the contemporary and critical. So this kind of goes in, so we know all these concepts, we know all these theories, that's good and all, those are abstract. So let's go and apply them to real people in real time. So what do all of these sociology of emotions, the way that we're socialized into specific emotions for certain genders, for certain race, times in history, right? What does that actually mean for us, for real people in real time? And so we look at things about race, gender, class, disability, sexuality, citizenship, and other intersections of marginality, and see like what do those things really mean for us? And then, of course, considering this time in history, how it alters the self, our experiences, and our perceptions. So Module 3 then looks at issues of modernity, so this time in history. How is that changing us? How does that affect who we are? And then week 9 is spring break. So because week 8's, excuse me, readings are, so you have 1 from the book and then 2 that are PDF articles, and they are about postmodernity, which is a little bit hard to understand. It's a time period, and it explains how that time period kind of affects and impacts who we are. And it talks a little bit about the theories around postmodernity. And so they're very theory heavy. It's very theoretically based. And so they're a little hard to digest. So during week 9, during spring break, I just have you, finishing up those readings and emailing me, and maybe discussing with some of your peers what those mean and some questions that you have about them, because they're really important for our identities and for the future and who we are as people right now and in the future, for your children, your family, all that. And then we go into the abnormal self. So this is kind of how we socially construct the deviance and disorder. And make no mistake, who is deviant and what is considered, a disorder are all socially constructed. If you look at the DSM, the psychological kind of handbook that the psychologists use to diagnose individuals, it has changed throughout history, throughout its conception. Every new iteration has, they classify certain disorders differently. They add new disorders, or define them differently. And so that right there in itself shows that this is socially constructed. We are the ones that define and determine what is considered mental illness, who is considered deviant, and so we discussed that. You have assignment part 3 due for that week. I skipped part 2, but it was due in module 2 on week 6, and then you had the module reflection week 7. So there, you start out with nothing that first week, and then that second or third week you have a part of your 5-part assignment, and then that last week is your module reflection from that entire module. So it'll include 3 or 4 weeks. Then we move into module 4, and we really get into kind of these intersections of marginality. So we go to gendered selves. We look at how we are gendered and what impact that has on us. Resisting inequalities, right? So we look at how people are treated unequal or unfairly. There's prejudice, there's racism, right? And how people resist that. And so that gives us a little bit of agency, and it's not just things are happening to us, but here are the tactics and ways that we resist these little marginality, prejudice, biases, those types of things. You have part 4 due that week. That'll be a big one. You're going to really want to put a lot of work into that and time. And then the next week we have the question self. And so this kind of really goes into citizenship and boundaries. And that, as we know, boundaries are socially constructed. We have wars to try to get more territory. So obviously, where a certain line is in the sand is arbitrary and made by us. The idea of legal and illegal is developed by us and very arbitrary, and is different for depending on what part of the sand, what line in the sand, what side you're on. So it's kind of discussing this kind of undocumented experience and the social construction of these boundaries and what that means for those folks who have to experience this marginality. And then we go into the poor self, and so we talk again about resistance, how we deal with being poor in this country and the discourses that impact us as folks who live in this country and hear about poverty and see poverty. This might be a really interesting week because all of us live in Las Vegas, or I would assume most of us do, and so you can see the poverty around us, pretty. It's pretty in your face, right? The homelessness here is right. It's at every corner. It's in front of buildings that you go in front of, right? You see the camps. And the way that we talk about poverty and poor people in this country impacts the social services and the policies that get developed to help or hinder those folks. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and the resistance tactics that people have developed individually or in groups to fight off these kind of injustices. Then you'll have a study week where you can just meet with me and for questions about your final paper, finish up your final paper, and submit it. And so that finals week, the assignment 5 will be your research paper, and it'll be a 7 to 12 page research paper. That sounds daunting, but we'll talk about it in a minute. It's not going to be as daunting because of the way that I have this 5-part assignment set up. And note that due date is on a Monday because that's finals week, and so the day that you have finals is always different for finals week. So you can have it Monday by midnight, and then I will grade that week and have your grades in that next Monday, so that those of you who are graduating or whatever, can have that grade and be able to go graduate. At the end of the syllabus, of course, there are the usual things that you see in every one of your syllabi, the policies for the university, really. Academic misconduct, copyright, information on the Disability Resource Center. I encourage all of you, if you have some sort of disability, whether that be dyslexia or just, you can't read as fast as other people, make sure that you kind of visit them and get those resources, because there's no point in struggling when you have resources. And the whole point of a university is to kind of teach you how to find and use those resources, and of course teach you, academics, but you can we want you to learn the best way possible, right? Nobody wants you to fail. Information about final exams, incomplete grades, library resources, your Rebel Mail. I cannot accept mail from anything other than your Rebel Mail. So if you send me an email from your private Gmail account or Outlook account, whatever it is, I can't answer it at all because the university, there's spam or spyware or whatever, all of those, bad viruses or whatever that could come from it. So they only allow us to answer open things from the Rebel Mail. So make sure that you're emailing me from the right email address if you'd like to get a response. The religious holiday policy, tutoring, coaching, and then the UNLV Writing Center. I highly recommend going to the Writing Center at least once, if not a couple more times. You have a lot of writing to do for this class. You have 4 module reflections that are, I think 3 to 5 pages, I believe. And then you have that final paper, which is 7 to 12. And then assignment part 4 of that is like 5 to 7 pages as well. And so visiting that writing center can kind of help you make sure that you're alerted to the mistakes that you may be making, those types of things. So make sure that you utilize that resource. The library also has awesome resources that you'll need for the things that we're doing this semester. All right, so timeline of the class, we got that. Setup of the week, got that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about, make sure that I got everything. Okay. Oh, I just wanted to say real quick that so the order of the weeks that you're going to read in these readings. So I set these up as, like I said, they transition to each other and they flow. So your part 1 is going to set you up as or the module 1. Part 1, all of that is kind of your core foundational theories and perspectives that you need to know to be able to understand anything else in the course. And then module 1, of course, are those main theoretical perspectives that underpin everything else, even the module 2. Even within the week, so you have module 1 that all go together in that way, and then within the weeks, I have them where they flow as well. Just getting why sociology is important, and we start with the nature versus nurture debate, and then kind of the sociological imagination, which is if you've ever had a sociology class, you read it in every one of them. It's kind of a key piece for sociology. And then sociological mindfulness that you'll read, and it just preps you up for the next week. And then you go on to symbolic interaction, and each one of those, it's the person who first started it in like the 1800s, and then the person who modified it, and really Mead, so Cooley and then Mead came up with what we really know, came up with symbolic interaction, and then Goffman, who coined the word symbolic interaction and took Mead's work and refined it and made it a little bit more contemporary, although I think it was like in the 50s, so not super contemporary. And then, you go to week 4, dramaturgy, which is Goffman, who also, so Bloomer and Goffman were students of Mead. Mead was a student of Cooley, and so Bloomer did symbolic interaction, and Goffman took that and kind of did dramaturgy, which I think drama, right? It's a play on that the whole world is a stage. And then every one of those kind of build up upon each other. Actually, all 3 of the dramaturgy are from the same idea that he had, the same book that they, in his book, he's got multiple ideas that relate to the main idea, and so they give you all 3 of those. And so then we transfer there, once we have that, to the macro and the micro, right? The self and the society, and how those 2 things are related. And then usually within that week, the last reading serves as a good transition to the next week. And so I try to make it where they build up upon each other for the module, and then the weeks build up and transition to the next week when appropriate or applicable, or when I have the right material. So hopefully that kind of makes it easy for you to follow along, makes it easier for you to digest and start making connections and understanding. It's hard when you're reading it on your own. So those questions and comments that I put there, and then the way that I set it up, hopefully kind of eventually will really just make connections for you. And then of course, whenever you email me or come by my office, we can do that work as well. Alrighty, so we're trying not to make this so super long. So let's talk about these module reflections first. So you have 4 of them. You have 1 at each end of each module. There were 75 points each for a total of 300 points. So each module, of course, consists of those several distinct but related topics. At the end of the module, you'll turn in this reflection page where I want you to critically synthesize and discuss the core ideas in the assigned readings. So I don't want just 3 pages of summaries of each reading. You can briefly summarize, each week. So you'd have 4 paragraphs maybe of each week, kind of summarizing them. So in 1 or 2 sentences, you would 1 or 2 sentences you would say, this reading says this reading says this, and they're all related this way. But I don't want the entire thing being that. But if that helps you kind of start writing, to kind of really briefly, like I said, 1 to 2 sentences per reading, 1 paragraph per week, and then the rest of it, I want you to critically engage with and discuss and compare and contrast the core ideas that are happening there, right? And so this week or this module, all of the readings, let's see, explained how the self and society are connected through socialization, something like that. And then give me examples and comparison contrast. So in this first module, hint, you can write this in your reflection. It'll be kind of a way to pop you off. You're going to hear about Bloomer and Goffman, right? Like I talked about a minute ago. And everything in this first week is about the self, right? Because we're talking about the self and society. So everything in the whole class really is about self and society. And then we talk about the little nitty-gritty aspects of that. So that first week, though, both Goffman and Bloomer are talking about the self, right? I'm sorry, Bloomer too, but we'll say Mead. Mead and Goffman are both talking about the self. Where, though, Mead would say that the self is, society is a product of the self, and Bloomer would say that self is the product of society. No, other way around. Mead would say that the self is product of society, and Goffman, says that the self is a continuing of society. Anyways, so I'll say that again more clearly in the video. I'm trying to get this out fast because we're at we're 40 minutes here. And so you would just say, okay, so all of them are talking about the self, but Goffman and Mead, while they're both talking about the self, they diverge in these ways about the self, and then bring in other things if you want or whatever. But that's kind of just an example of how, yes, you can summarize a little bit, but then I want you talking about those core ideas. I want you to compare either concepts or authors, symbolic interaction versus dramaturgy. What are those key differences? I want to see you thinking at a little bit higher level, right? Using some more of those critical engagement, which will help you understand it better. So yes, these module reflections will take some time. You're going to need to take out a few hours, maybe not all at one time, but throughout the week, or even weeks, to write down and discuss and think about with yourself these things that you're reading, so that you can really give me a critically engaged product for that module reflection. So like I said, I don't want these to be a regurgitation or summary of the materials. They should be original and thoughtful reviews of the major themes, the salient points, and like I said, commentary or critique of the things that you're reading. You might have even read things, if you're a psychology major, that are very similar to this, right? So some theory in psychology and the social psychology, they overlap. And maybe you want to say, I really thought this was interesting because in my psychology class, this theory says this, and so this kind of helped me understand it in this way, or these two work together, whatever, or they diverge, something like that. So your main goal, though, is to organize your thoughts by distilling the essential components in the author's arguments, right? So each author is saying something, they're getting to a point. And so figure out what that point is, right? And then whenever you're looking at that point, look at the other points that people are making and see if you can't, make some connections, or just even say what that author's point is so that I can see that you read it, that you understand it, at least to some degree, and that you are understanding them together, right? In a module, in weeks, between modules later on as we get going. So you should offer some comparisons, contrast across readings when appropriate, and also raise issues that you don't understand. You can say in there, hey, I really didn't understand this. This is what's confusing me, right? Don't just say you don't understand it. Try to tell me what you don't understand so that I might be able to give you some commentary back on, what I could clarify for that. So the first module reflection, I won't grade as harshly. I'll put more comments and really try to, help you see what I'm looking for in that way. Some people, they get it right off the bat and they can do it, and some people have a hard time moving beyond those summaries. So as long as I see you moving past the summary, I can give you some more guidelines and, hey, this is where you could have done this or could have done that, so that you can really see, you were almost there, but just push a little bit more and say this, say that. And that way, and for the next one, I expect it to be better for you to take my comments and use them, to make yourself better and make you be able to do the assignment better. So I will increasingly be grading them a little bit more harshly, if you will. So make sure that you're taking in my comments. And if you don't understand how to do it, or if you're just like, hey, this makes me nervous, am I understanding these? Come by my office, my office hours. Speaking of office hours, real quick, my office hours are Monday and Wednesday from 10 to 12. This is a great time, not only if you're having a problem or if you are, I hate my grade or whatever, come by and discuss the theories with me, or discuss what you don't understand or what you do understand. I really love it when people come in and, are like, oh my God, this theory blew my mind. Let's have some conversation about it. Me getting to know you also makes it easier whenever I'm grading you to understand where you're coming from, to understand what you might mean, because without having any kind of context of who you are, I'm filtering what you wrote through my mind and how my perceptions are, which you'll understand after this class, the social psychology of it. That's how we work. And that's kind of the downfall of these online courses. So coming by my office at least once just to say hi, have a little conversation will really help you. And I say that for every class, not just me. This is just basic social psychology information. Okay. So you'll have those due the very last week of each module. It's pretty, and then more information that will be in that first assignment. So you'll have a lot more detail, and then the portal to set to do it in. Everything that you turn in has to be a .doc, .doc, or .docs, docx. So Microsoft Word. I can't comment on any other format, so you must use Microsoft Word and submit it in that format. I don't accept it if not. And it can cause you to lose points or just considered late, which I don't take. You'll get a 0 for. Make sure you're doing that. You get the whole Microsoft Office suite for free from the university. And I have a link to that on the syllabus. So if you don't already have that, you can download it actually on a few computers. So if you have a desktop at home and then a laptop as well or whatever, you can download it on both and make sure that you have it. Also, all the computers on the university have it installed as well, so there's also no excuse for you not turning it in the correct format. So let's move on to, let me make sure that's what I want to move on to. Okay. Yeah, so a caveat. You are going to have those journal articles to read. And so since we're fixing to talk about the 5-page research paper, I want to let y'all know that some students do have a hard time reading scholarly work, those journal articles, because you've never read it before, right? And it's kind of more specific to the discipline. You don't know how to, it's a lot of pages, and you don't know how to just read the stuff that you need to know. For this class, the methods section, you probably don't need to read at all, right? Read the intro and the findings first and foremost, or the conclusion, I mean. And then if it's something that you really think is interesting, maybe it'll work for your own research paper, or you just really find it interesting and you want to actually read all of the findings in detail, go ahead and do that. But for most of them, you can get away with just reading the intro and the conclusion for you to understand what's going on. And if you read the intro and the conclusion and you're like, I still don't get it, then read the rest of it, right? But some of them, you'll read the intro and conclusion and you'll get it really easily. And so start with that. And so don't be so daunted by it. Just do that. I'm having you read these scholarly journal articles, for one, because it just is important for the it has the most important stuff for the class for that week, the ideas that I want you to get out. when you get to the contemporary area, it's a lot better because it is more contemporary, right? I have articles that were published in the last couple of years versus, 10 years or so, 5 years. And then also because for your research paper, you're going to have to find 10 sociological journal articles, right? Or social psychology. Sometimes communications research and our law reviews also are very social psychological or sociological. So those can be used as well, but they have to be scholarly, peer-reviewed journal articles, 10 of them for the research paper. So reading these, and like I said, some of them you might be able to use for your research papers, depending on what topic you choose. Reading these will allow you to kind of already get an understanding of what I'm expecting in journal articles, how to read them pretty easy. So you're not like, oh my God, I have 10 journal articles to read, right? That are like 20 pages each, right? Don't do all that. If there's one that's really important to your argument, read all of it. The other ones, read the intro and conclusion. And so the 5-part research paper. I actually we'll go over that in another video because this one is 46 minutes now, and I don't want you to be kind of overly digestible digestible. What? See, I can't even speak anymore. That's why we're going to go to a different video. So I will speak all about all of the 5 parts, about how it's supposed to help you and my expectations for that in this next video that you can access. But you can see, I'll just briefly, just for the sake of looking at the syllabus, that this is a cumulative assignment that's spread across the semester, right? So you have one part of the assignment due each module. So module 1, you'll have part 1 due, module 2, part 2, so on and so forth, and then part 5 being your final paper. They are increasing amounts of points, and with part 1 is 50 points because it's just sending me, your research proposal, what topic you want to look at and why you think it's important. Part 2 is some questions that you have about it, right? And then as you increase in difficulty for these, they increase in points. And so look at the next video for the more details on this and why it's important, what we're going to do, how it can help you, and all that good stuff. I will leave you with, I'm very excited to have you all in my course this semester. I really enjoy teaching this. It is what I do for a living. And, we're going to learn a lot of really fun, deep, heavy things. And I hope that you enjoy it as well. Real quick, don't forget, get this book ASAP. Have a good day. Bye.